Miss Ali, and thank you for coming and speaking to the Sunday Tribune.
Hello.
I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your practice in Mesmerism.
Absolutely. So, I've been practicing in Mesmerism for about 4 years now. I'm also a qualified hypnotherapist, and I have been having a large amount of success with particular things. I can tell you some stories about clients because I think that maybe will give you a bit of an insight into what I do. So I had a chap find me from America, which was quite exciting from the point of view that he came over particularly for a week. So the intention was that he came every day for 5 days. And we spoke on Skype before he came, and I could tell that there were sort of various different issues with him, maybe that he wasn't really kind of expressing to me verbally, but you know how you can pick up information and insight sometimes from what people don't actually say. And I could tell that there was a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. There was stuff that, reading between the lines, issues with his father and everything, his relationships there. So I set the intention that actually, although he was actually purely coming to get into a lovely deep state of trance, one which he wasn't able to achieve usually using hypnosis, what I was going to do was I was going to work on him so that he could resolve all these other issues. And it was really interesting. So the first day he came in, I got him into a very deep trance. I had to keep working because the thing that would happen to him is that he would start shaking, and his body would kind of, I suppose in the process of relaxing would kind of like quiver and shake, and it would bring him out of the hypnotic trance. So what I did was I had to keep taking him deeper and deeper and deeper and beyond that, to the point where we achieved this wonderful deep trance. And then the next day he came in, I thought, well, actually, we've really achieved the thing that he wanted. We're going to now work on the other stuff. So I did this thing where I envisaged him as a small boy sitting on his lap, and he was having a kind of dialogue. So we're creating this sort of relationship between him as an adult and him as a child, with the intention that he would achieve deep healing. And it was a fascinating thing. So this is really me working for an hour with this pure intention, like really putting more and more energy in the whole time. I didn't mention what I had done at the end of the session because I didn't want to create any form of suggestion. And when he came in the next day, he said, "Oh, Melissa, I spent all night awake." He said, "I did this thing that I've heard other people talk about, which is all this kind of inner child work. I spent the night going through different incidents that had really upset me with different people, and I had these kind of completion conversations, and I expressed all this emotion." I said, "Oh, well, actually, that's very interesting." Then I explained to him what I had done. And all week long, basically, I kept working with particular things with the intention that when he went home, he would be a fully expressed person who had a real sense of self-worth. And it was really extraordinary. And actually, as I'm an artist as well, he came to our private view that I had on the Friday, which was in Beau Art, so off in the East End. And he was like he'd always been in that environment. And we're talking about this guy from, like a little town in the US, kind of probably hadn't come across that kind of people or communicated about art before. And it was like he was just in his element. He was so relaxed, he was very happy, and he was just walking around talking to everybody. And it was so different. I mean, like the person who'd walked in was this, he kind of almost dragged his head down. He had this sort of, this like the weight of the world on his shoulders. And it was just beautiful to see this person who was so relaxed. And it's wonderful because when he got home, everybody remarked that he was just like a completely different person and so much easier to be around. And so I have lots of stories like that, and it's a really great thing because when you meet somebody, you hear, obviously you're kind of all the time listening between the lines about what it is that really is the issue. You're really trying to get to the core of the problem, and then when I'm actually doing the mesmerism, what I'm doing is I'm focusing entirely on them being like the ultimate, the best they can possibly be, given, you know, all the genes, all the things that they've inherited. It's like looking at that time of pure potential, like almost at the point of conception or preconception, before all of the issues happen, all of the things that, all the negative program, etc. And my intention is that they become absolutely the ultimate that they possibly can be. And so I then, what I do is I connect with the ground. So I'm connecting, I have a tree that I stand on, the roots, the tulip tree, which is above me and below me. And I connect with the roots of the tree. I connect to the water table. It's very interesting because that's what mesmerists do. Going back in history, for instance, Charles Dickens was a mesmerist. It's not a well-known fact, but he was. And what he would do, he would go off to Mount Etna. And there were all these reports of him, he'd kind of like burn off his eyebrows as he looked into the volcano. And what it was about was trying to connect with nature and gaining strength and energy from nature. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing up that kind of natural energy, that sort of, I suppose you might call, you know, natural, you know, godlike energy in a way. And I'm bringing it through me and I'm directing it into the person, but I'm using pure intention for them to achieve, you know, absolute kind of like their perfect state. And I've had all sorts of remarkable things happen. I had a client who came to see me who was working in an industry. She'd come into it in her 50s. And it was like a kind of the media, and you know how it's very much a young person's game, and she was feeling really kind of beaten up. She'd been working as an assistant production manager on a documentary, and she had been kind of like, well, she felt completely drained by the whole experience, drained emotionally, drained physically, drained kind of her, you know, any bit of ounce of herself. And I was intending that she also have this sense of why she went into it in the first place, you know, kind of getting her back in touch with the passion and the drive that she had for it, and also just kind of like completely re-energizing, again, getting into her sort of ultimate state. And it was really interesting. As I was working, I suddenly felt this shift of energy, and then it was like I was just pouring gold coins on her. Gold coins, gold coins, gold coins, gold coins, gold coins. And I was thinking, what is this? I've never had this before. It was a very interesting one. But I just kept going with it because it was still flowing. More and more gold coins. Anyway, I didn't mention, you know, what I'd been doing at the end of the session because I didn't want to create any form of suggestion. She was supposed to come and see me the following week, and she rang me up. She said, Melissa, I'm really sorry, but I can't come. She said, my next job, I've actually been made production manager, and so I have to start a week early. I said, oh, that's very interesting. So did they give you a pay rise by any chance? And she said, yes, they have, yeah. And so I explained what had happened, and she told me that in actual fact as well, what in the kind of interim, that her mother-in-law had passed away, which was obviously a sad thing, but they had actually now had the income to pay off their mortgage and, you know, also, you know, invest in other things, which is a bit of a strange one. So that's obviously a very sad thing, but it kind of explained this complete change in her circumstances.
What mesmerism actually is, because I was told it was like an animal magnetism. Would that be a good analogy?
Well, that's what Mesmer kind of termed it, because he believed that there was a magnetic fluid that ran through all of us. So when he first started doing mesmerism, he was using magnets, but after a while he realised that he didn't even need to use the magnets, so he let that go. And really what it is, it's very hard to explain because it is like an energy. So people report, you know, maybe bioenergy, but it's the thing about it is that when I'm working, I am in a way working as though it is like a magnetic energy, because I'm connecting with the person and I'm pulling out negative stuff, and I'm basically, like I said, trying to balance the person through the energy that I'm putting in. The thing about it is that I'm firstly This is the key thing. I put the person into trance. So that's really key. You don't have any other healing method that works with people actually within a trance state. So it makes it much easier from the point of view that the conscious mind is bypassed. So all of those things that we put up, all those barriers, all those beliefs that we put up about how we can't be healed, about, you know, experiences that we maybe have had in the past that would actually create some form of filter on what goes on, all of that is out of the way. And I'm communicating really directly with the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is where all our memories live, it's where all our habits live, you know, our imagination, all of these things, so our senses, etc. So by having the conscious mind bypassed, it means that really I'm accessing the person's, well, their whole being really at a very deep state. So that's in a way partly how it flows so well.
Would you say it was their core?
Well, yes, it is like their core. Yeah, absolutely. And for some reason, I have always had the capacity to kind of tune in to people, and it's almost like I feel a bit as though there's something about the flow. I have always had the facility to kind of tune myself such that I can connect with that person, and once I've built that connection, once that's done, then I just feel that the energy flows.
And is it your energy, or is it energy coming from the, whatever you want to believe in, divine source or the earth?
It's coming through me, it's not my energy.
So
otherwise I would be very drained. No, it's coming through me. Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, I mean, people may have different ways of expressing it, but it's like, you know, some people might call it chi, some people might call it, yes, like divine energy. I know personally that I'm also connecting, like I said, in with nature. So really, I'm trying to get people back in that natural flow, that natural state.
And you mentioned Mesmer, which maybe you could explain a little bit about who he is.
Right, oh, I'll do my best. He was an incredible character and a powerhouse in his own right. He had an immense amount of charisma, and he went into being a doctor, but he got very kind of turned off because basically the ways that the facilities that doctors had at that particular time were things that would make people basically vomit or, you know, get rid of anything that they thought was bad. You know, whether or not you use leeches or use something like calomel, which would make people sick. And really he felt that the actual remedies were making people sicker.
He wasn't particularly liked, was he? Like the doctors and the medics tried to shut him down.
He wasn't particularly liked, no, and it's interesting really. I think he would form very close alliances with people, and they would be like his new best friend, and then he was such a potent, powerful personality. He'd often fall out with people quite a lot. But in terms of when working with the doctors, they felt quite threatened. And, you know, he was earning a lot of money, basically, because not only was he earning a lot of money, especially when he was working in Paris, he was training up a lot of the aristocracy to become Mesmerists themselves, but he would have different classes of people that he would help. So he would help the poorest, but he would also be charging a fortune to the wealthiest people to help them. And so he was really like this sort of larger-than-life personality. And so yes, the doctors didn't like him, but then they really didn't have very much that they could personally offer at that particular time. It's very interesting because some of the history of mesmerism is that it was very successful until ether was discovered, because we actually had Mesmerism Hospital in London, and where they perform operations using mesmerism. And in fact, Esdale did this as well. James Esdale did this in India. He would have people who would put the patient into a mesmeric state so that they could perform operations on that person, because it would slow down the blood and in fact actually increase the likelihood of survival, but also quicken up the time of recovery. And we had mesmerism hospitals in London. That John Elliotson, who was a very famous doctor, surgeon, was partly involved in that, but with the birth of, or not the birth, but the discovery of ether, where you could put somebody into, obviously a sort of anaesthetic state, then it sort of mesmerism kind of became less sort of, I suppose, exciting. That was the new thing. Plus, mesmerism at that particular time was connected with the sort of spiritualist thing. It's one of those things in America. It had gained this kind of reputation of being connected to the spiritualist, movement.
The table knocking and things like that, or the talking to the dead.
Yes, sort of thing. What it was that there were some. That often what would be used, the subjects who would be used for mesmerism demonstrations would be like these young women in their 90s, on the stage and everything. And there were various, we can read up about it, there are various uses of these, particularly these twins who kind of seem to know what the other was thinking, and in fact, I need to think.
Like a sideshow, then?
Yes, a little bit like a sideshow, and unfortunately it kind of undermined the whole sort of medical aspect that was so kind of actually really fascinating about the mesmerism at the time, and it sort of undermined its reputation. I think what it did as well was possibly because the doctors were so anti it and threatened by it. It gave them a bit more power to be able to, in a way, demonstrate against it.
Can you explain to us the difference between mesmerism and hypnosis?
Indeed, yes, absolutely. So with mesmerism, I look the person in the eyes and I take them into a trance doing that. Usually with hypnosis, for instance, to begin with, I would use what's known as a progressive induction, which is a verbal kind of suggestion-based induction where I get the person to relax their body, and then I take them step by step into a hypnotic trance. It's remarkable, really, to think of the difference between the two. Once they're used to going into hypnosis, for instance, if I was dealing with hypnosis, I can do a more rapid induction. But using mesmerism, I can put the person into a very deep, very, very all-encompassing, physically relaxing trance, like I said, just by looking the person in the eyes. And then what I do is I put energy into them. Now, obviously, that's not what I do when I do hypnosis. So it's very fascinating because mesmerism was the first trance therapy in that respect. But what happened was that one of Mesmer's disciples had the idea of beginning to use language combined with that trance and would give suggestions when the person was in trance, which is how modern hypnosis occurred. So that's where they separated out, really.
Be positive, like aphorisms and words.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I also do hypnosis where I do regression. So that is obviously something that you would do. I would go back to the trauma that created the habit, that is the negative habit and the negative belief, and I deal with it at that point. So in regression. That is a completely separate thing to doing the mesmerism. If I feel with a client, for instance, that what they need is to understand where they had, that issue from, then I would actually do the hypnosis combined with regression. But if I feel that actually really what we can do is we can achieve the result by using mesmerism, by getting them into that deep state and by me putting that really positive energy into them, some people are incredibly receptive. You can get extraordinary results very quickly, then I will always do the mesmerism. So that's what I do.
And I suppose for some people it's a bit more difficult because they built them walls up.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, with the people who've built the walls up, sometimes actually mesmerism can almost be more useful because you're not having to get them to speak, because when I do regression, we're having a conversation within the regression, because obviously I need the information to work with. So with people who are particularly protected by walls, then they're more likely at that point to kind of lift themselves up. So my hard effort that I've done to get them into that deep state, that slightly makes it much more difficult. Whereas actually with the mesmerism, I get that we're really bypassing all of that stuff. So that's really wonderful. It's very gratifying.
If you could tell us about your recent art performance that happened in October.
Okay, so I was going to be exhibiting in a car park, literally in the middle of Cavendish Square in London, but underground. And I thought, right, I'm going to do some mesmerism, but I really needed to find out. I wouldn't do it unless I felt that there was some historical and some geographical connection. And I found out that Baron Dupotet, who was the person who is fabled to have brought mesmerism over to this country, who taught indeed Charles Dickens and John Eliotson, that he had a clinic in Cavendish Square. And I found the flyer, and it stated the times and the days that he would be practicing his mesmerism. So what I did was I confined my practice to those particular times when Baron Dupotet was practicing mesmerism in Cavendish Square, because I actually really enjoy bringing something that actually is very historical and is really very relevant and fascinating, because people are really interested in mesmerism. They don't understand exactly what it is, but there's something so enigmatic about it, obviously, and and because it's a sort of very, very powerful healing force, I like and enjoy bringing it into rather strange kind of environments, being in a concrete space kind of underneath all the parkland which is Cavendish Square, is a really, you would think would be a very odd place to discover some mesmerism. And there's something about it, I think, which is so fascinating. So in that situation I connected obviously with the water table underneath and use that to put into people. It's really interesting because there can be quite a lot of competition, kind of sound-wise, in those exhibitions, because a lot of people are sound artists and things. But actually, once somebody is in trance, it's like everything else just goes away, and they are in this very, very deep state.
And I suppose since it is animal magnetism, then you are attracting, as in magnetism does, the right kind of people to it, and people that would be interested in this kind of thing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm always a great believer in that, because I think that as well, we all, well, some people would sort of intellectually obviously put up boundaries about this, kind of like, or walls, but actually I think genuinely we are all in a way connected, and we are like animals, from the point of view that we need our kind of comfort. We need those feelings of connectedness. We need to feel warm. We need to feel somehow nurtured. And, we look out the ways that we can possibly have that, because actually, to be honest, that's what, we need it. It's like our powerhouse, isn't it? So, and mesmerism is one way of achieving that, but achieving that at a really kind of deeper level. One of the things that's really very interesting that I haven't mentioned about mesmerism is that the energy stays in you, so it keeps working. So you may leave with something, like at a certain point, but what's so interesting is that it just keeps going and keeps broadening. And that's one thing I really enjoy, is that when, people come and see me again, sometime later, but they bring back all these other stories about how, this particular thing has kind of, been resolved, but actually what it's kind of built into. So with the problem gone, about how they've been able to really kind of express themselves, how they've been able to go with the flow, how they just feel like it's so much easier for them to relax, how they feel that actually, these things that have held them back have now got to a point where they feel as though they've now can live a life which is much freer. And I find that really kind of extraordinary. I had a client come to see me who had issues with her weight, and I put her into a mesmeric trance, obviously. And it's fascinating because I heard the words, ask her if she's allowed to feel good about herself when she comes out. So I brought her out, immediately said, are you allowed to feel good about yourself? And it was like, no! But it was like this kind of, I mean, if in a cartoon, it's like my hair would have just gone back. It was like this complete, it was like a kind of popping of something, like a bottle of champagne or something. It's just like all of this kind of thwarted energy, all of this frustration just kind of seemed to release. And it's been an amazing thing because steadily, bit by bit, you know, she's gone from a size 24 down to like a size 18. But she's done it completely naturally. So she hasn't gone on a diet. She hasn't, you know, she hasn't had to... She's changed her diet because she wants to look after herself. So she's connecting in with her body and what her body needs. She's giving it enough fluids. And she's doing it because she wants to look after herself. So it somehow seems to have, you know, amazingly, that kind of unpopping helps her to connect with, actually, no, I can look after myself and I want to. I am worth it. And that
we are worth it.
We are worth it. We are worth it. We have to, you know, and actually, but a lot of the time we don't feel we are. That's the sad tragedy because of what things have happened to us.
So the work you do is helping people find themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.